Okay, enough of that. Welcome, everybody. Good morning to the Chippewa All-Stars Week 7 update. I'm your host and league commissioner, Craig Gallagher, the token Scotsman in our division, in our conference, in our league. Obviously, our choice of theme song this week is inspired by our weekly high score, our champion of champions, Terry Cosgrove. Cosgrove is a good Scottish name, as I've said to her on many occasions. Terry was this week's highest scoring player. She accrued far more points than almost anybody else. Well, Joe actually ran her pretty close, but 124 points is impressive by any measure. And so I dedicate our opening vignette to her. There's also something to be said for me as the lowest scorer, prostrating myself in such a fashion before all of you as a kind of penance. I think you'd all agree that it was more than appropriate. So today I've got 3 aims. The first is to recap on a week of scores that continue to befuddle and amaze in the NFL. Look at our scores, see who did well, who did not so well. Try to explain using bird entrails or some other method of divinity that I don't understand why my team continues to suck despite having what I consider one of the best rosters in the league. And finally to look ahead and to see what challenges lay in wait for those of you who have to face me as I settle comfortably into my role as a spoiler. Having once entertained hopes of the playoffs, now I simply entertain hopes of ruining your hopes of the playoffs. Unfortunately, I should say that I'm not taking the Stephen Hawking route in this approach. I thought, the live touch is more my style, but I'd like to thank Tristan DeLong, captain and emperor really of Ray and Roger's Bogus Adventure, one of the better team names in the league, for his efforts in producing these videos the last few weeks. We're all very grateful, and I'm sure we had a great time. I can't hope to be as funny or as witty as he is, but at least I can dance in a sort of ridiculous manner, and I didn't draft the Seahawks in the 3rd round. The Seahawks defense, that is. So, to recap on the NFL, first of all. So, who among you had the Giants' 3-game winning streak getting blown out in Philadelphia? The Eagles couldn't put up points to save themselves offensively, and yet there they were, thrashing the Giants 34-0. Dallas over Seattle. If you had that bet on at any point in the last 6 weeks, please tell me your secret, and can you play the lottery for me? The Lions, our beloved Lions, overcame the Vikings, which is is always a great thing, but it struck me as a sort of remarkable stat that the Lions hadn't won in Minnesota since 1997. We play the Vikings every single year, and we hadn't won a game in Minnesota since 1997. It really speaks to the futility of the Lions for most of our lives, but also the promise of better things. As these records get cast aside, the hope is that better times lie ahead. So the Lions are 4-2, one of the best defenses in the league. Offense sputtering a little bit, definitely the worst kicking game in the league. So we'll see how things play out. I still have hope. As an aside, here's your weekly Lions question of the week. Weekly question of the week. That's what we're going to call it from now. The weekly question of the week is this: which Lions player are you most impressed with this season? I'm going to give my vote to Darius Slay, our second-year cornerback, who last year was anonymous and in many respects was the cause of a lot of the misery that the back end of the defense had against passers like Aaron Rodgers, Tony Romo, even Mike Glennon in that awful Tampa Bay game. This season, I think Darius Slay is the most improved player in the team. I think he's been one of the reasons that players like Aaron Rodgers, not so much Kyle Orton or Teddy Bridgewater, but other decent attackers, even Cam Newton to a certain extent, have not had their way passing the ball against the Lions the way they have in the past. So who's yours? Your weekly question of the week is thus: Beyond that, in the NFL, there are a couple more surprises. I mean, the St. Louis Rams are much more terrible than anyone thought. The Oakland Raiders may be a little better, not much better, but a little better. And the Jacksonville Jaguars continue to raise the question of why Jacksonville has a professional sports team at all. Although I do have a soft spot for Blake Bortles, I'm not going to lie. To recap on the Chippewa All-Stars League, which of course continues to frustrate and disappoint those of us who, actively argued for having this and sort of pushed to have it and create it, meaning me. Not so much Carl, but little Carl. To recap on the results, I have them on my phone here. Matt Suze overcame, at least he has straight teeth, right? 116-70. Now, Matt, as I said to you in the comments this week, playing that team every other week of this season, I would have blown everybody out. My problem thus far has been what I like to call the Rodney Ruxin issue. I'm a tinkerer. I tinker. I switch and I match and I move and I up and down and play matchups, and I don't pick the best team on my roster. So henceforth, I'm trusting the players who are producing more than they're not. You have already played me once. You'll have to play me again, and we'll see what happens the next time around. But those of you who have me to come should despair. That's what I think. I think you should despair. I think my previous form is an aberration, and I think I'm about to go on a 7-game winning streak. And so all of you prepare to be smushed in that period. Carl kicked football in the groin with a football in the groin. Liberty Prime over Eric's team, 82-71. Carl, I have to say, 3-3, not a bad record, considering you drafted Matthew Stafford in the first round, who, as we all know, might be the least reliable, most frustrating quarterback in the league after Jay Cutler. Jay Cutler gets the honorary nomination there. To go 3-3 is quite impressive. Eric joins me in my futility, but Eric has not yet suffered the ignominy of being the lowest scoring player, so he gets slight kudos for that. A really tense game between our hero kicker, holding out for a hero kicker, as we know from our theme song, Terry's team, and Pelvic Sorcerer, again, one of the better names. It's sort of an enduring favourite of mine. Both teams are 4-2, thanks to Terry's victory, 124-112. That's more points. Each of them have more points than were scored in the Liberty Prime football on the ground match. It's funny how these matchups tend to shake out. And then the Capitalist Big Dogs, over Ray and Rogers Bulldogs Adventure, 119-79. What is there to say here except that Joe continues to throw his massive weight around and smash us all into the wall with his extraordinary belly thumps and various, left and right, and his secret knowledge of Soviet reorganization of farming and such like. The only way to put this is to say that Tristan has been forcibly removed from his peasant landholding and is now working in a factory, stuffing socks into, faux Soviet dolls as punishment for having angered the capitalist pig dogs. So what's ahead? That's a good question. The matchups are intriguing to say the least. I have my first chance to experience some of that magical pelvic sorcery as I take on Robo Charlie 7000. Charlie is 4-2 and I'm in 1-5, but I think I can safely say that our records are not reflecting our ability to, pick a team and play it well. I anticipate a victory here, as I always do, and I expect to be a comfortable 2-5 after this match. And Charlie will be 4-3, and I will be closer to him than he is to me now. Terry and Carl, what to say about this game? Carl has a chance. I mean, I'm a very much a believer in impossibility is never impossible. There's always a very, 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 very slight possibility that even the most unlikely thing could happen. And in this case, Carl could win. He could beat Terry. It could happen. I beat Terry. Think of that for a second. I beat Terry. Carl could do it. It's not impossible. We'll see. I'm going to put my money on Terry to win that one, though. I've been sneakily impressed with Terry the whole season, Not so much her picking of team names, too. That continues to suck. But her ability to, roll out victories over teams who theoretically should have more talent than the one that she drafted. I'm continuing to be impressed with their team management. Tristan and Matt square off this week in what we might call the terrible trash-talking matchup, the terrible trash-talking bowl. We'll see where that one goes. Tristan is 3-3. Matt is 4-2. He wants to peg Matt back to 4-3, and that makes them both on the same record. It's a division game. Could mean a lot at the end of the season. And then football on the ground and the capitalist Pig Dogs. I'm sorry, Eric. I think you have even less chance than Carl has of upsetting Terry of beating Joe. And I say that as somebody who was absolutely mullered by Joe. And that's a good British word there, mullered. Okay, as I say, this art update has not quite been to the same sort of sexy extent as Tristan's Stephen Hawking update, but this is how I hope to continue it from now on. If anyone wants to volunteer in future weeks, just drop me a line and we can do it. This has been your Chippewa All-Stars Weekly Update. Go Teeth.